Good afternoon. Now let's start our talk show, episode 88. The only things that stand between you and your dream is the will to try and believe that is actually possible. It's a beautiful quote quoted by Joel Brown. So, with this quote, I would like to bring our talk show named Conversation with Consultants with episode 88 of our guest talk series. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Rima Kumari, ECR coordinator of SKANG, and I am your host for today's talk show. Before I begin our talk show, let me briefly introduce SK Associates and Group. We are an ISO certified management consulting firm registered under the MSMED Act 2006 with the Government of India. Our mission is to providing consulting service to student entrepreneurs globally, covering areas such as compliance, operations, marketing, research and development, human capital, strategic and operations. Our passion is lies in helping these budding entrepreneurs bringing their dreams to life and contribute to global economics growth. Entrepreneurship is a catalyst for change and innovation. It's a powerful force that can reshape industries, transform lives, and make the world a better place. We are committed to supporting student entrepreneurs on their journey, equipping them with the tools, knowledge, and network they need to succeed. Now, before I begin our show, let's take a moment to introduce our guest for today. It gives us immense pleasure to welcome Mr. Parth Giri, founder and CEO of AD Global Consultancy, to this special event. We are truly honored by your presence today, and we are delighted to have you here in this talk show to share your insight with us. We would like to start this interview. Our first question for you: why do most business ideas look strong at the planning and stage but fail during execution?
Thank you, Rima. And before answering your questions, I just wanted to uh, say good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am really glad to be part of this today's conversations because the topic what Rima told today, why ideas look strong but struggle during execution. This is something I have experienced closely in my during my professional journey. And when I talk about my professional journey, over last 2 decades, I was being CFO to multiple industries. And post that, I had a experience of 2 years of investment banking. I started under ADGC brand, and I have seen the businesses rarely fail because of lack of ideas. They generally struggle when execution meets the real world pressure actually. So that is where today's topic, and I am looking forward to sharing some practical observations that I experienced, and I'll share it with you today. And now what Rima asked the first questions, that I'll come to that questions and let's discuss that key how this executions and the idea stage, how it differs from an initial idea stage and the execution stage. And I appreciate that Rima, you started with such an important questions because I have seen this across industries and over many years. Most ideas generally don't fail because they are bad ideas. They fail because we make planning in an ideal condition, whereas the execution happens in real conditions. This is the difference between idea stage and the execution stage, because executions happens in market with people with different of external factors. At planning stage, everything looks so clean. You will think that yes, it will happen, and everything is looking so good, and we'll do something wonders, and we'll execute a project, we'll make margins, we'll do everything in order as per the planning or as per the idea stage what you made. But when your idea stage hits the real world, like the execution stage, it affected by external factors, and it affected your timelines, it affect your cost, the customer's behavior will be different, and your decision will be different. So what it says execution exposes lot of uncertainty. This needs to be understood at the planning stage. Every founders, every business have to understand this. When you will go for execution, lot of uncertainty you need to face. People uncertainty, your delays, your cash flow pressure, and the most important, changing behavior of the market conditions. That is very important, and we all need to accept it at the and we need to plan it, we need to provision it at the time of ideation stage. That is what generally when we make any idea, when we plan any idea, it is based on assumptions. Whereas execution test those assumptions. This is a very important aspects we need to understand. Always at the execution level, our all assumption being tested whether it was perfect or it was imperfect or it was executable or not. I'll bring some practical aspects into it. I have seen companies where the business plan looked great on paper. Demand was clear, margins were healthy, even funding was arranged. Because generally, when you have an idea for execution, you need funding and all those things. These also arranged. But once the execution started, the reality changed from your idea. What type of reality changed when the execution started? The customer delayed your payments, vendor demands advances, vendor demands on time payments, your key resources underperformed, your cost moved faster than your revenue, and the most important things is that none of this was captured clearly during the ideation stage, during your planning stage. So I'll summarize it. In this case, the idea didn't fail. What exactly failed? The preparedness for the executions. Because you made the idea, but the preparedness was not there. So the preparedness of the idea was actually failed. And I'll tell you how it happens actually. And why it happens. Planning is usually done in a isolation. Means you are sitting at your office, you are sitting on your boardroom with a leadership team and the founders with a great Excel spreadsheet, beautiful PPTs. Generally, idea and planning is like this. But as I said, execution happened in the market with the people, with pressure, and the most important, with imperfect informations. That gap is where most business struggle. If everybody, all the business can understand that gap, then they can smoothly execute any of the projects as per the plan, as per the idea, and as per the projections. So I will say this, a strong idea is important, but execution requires system, discipline, and the most important, ability to adapt when your assumptions break. This is very important. If you have a system, if you have a discipline that you can adapt when your assumptions break, you have a plan B, then you can sustain at execution level. At the real world challenges will stand out that time. That is what the execution teaches us, the real lessons that a planning or an idea never can.
It sounds good, sir. Moving with the next question. What usually changes when an idea moves from paper to real world action?
Yes, I can say this is a very practical questions, because this is exactly where a founders get surprised, because they didn't expect all these things on the execution stage. And why this happens, why this mindset and why this situation happens. On paper, actually, all ideas look stable. But when it hit the real world, when it come to the execution stage, how it behave, how it react, because that time lot of things start moving at same time, and because of that, what look predictable at the planning stage, that becomes dynamic at your execution stage. Because execution stage, as I said, it depends on external factors, so it is dynamic in nature. Let me simplify it. Ki in planning, assumptions are static in nature, but execution introduces dependencies. When execution started, lot of dependencies on external factors come in front of you, like customers react differently, vendors behaved based on your cash flow, and because of these type of challenges, teams started performing under pressure. So what happened because of that? The business stopped being a model and starts being a system. So what does it mean? It means you need to develop a system for an executions, not a model. Model is a planning, but execution is something you need to deliver it. You need to execute it with lot of uncertainties when it will be there in front of you. And I have seen cases where the company have a great revenue projection with accurate, but still they struggled at the time of executions. And why? I'll give you some practical level examples by which it will be very clear to you. Because customer paid late, as I said, ki generally customer paid late. If customer paid late, what happens? Your inventory cycle will be stretched. If your inventory cycle is stretched, what are the repercussions? Your working capital pressure will increase. And I hope everybody, whoever has joined today, they understand this cash cycle, this working capital cycles, and how it works. I'll just touch upon in a very brief way by which it will give the context to you. What a conversion, cash conversion cycle or a working capital cycle says, you buy your raw material, you paid cash and buy your raw material. Then it goes to your production stage. From production stage to finished good stage, then you selling the products in the market. And when you are selling the products in the market, you are collecting the cash out of that selling the product. So this is a complete cash conversion cycles. The shorter the cycle, it is good for business. The longer the cycle, it is that much stressful for the business. So that is what, if your customer is paying late, lot of things will be affected one by one. All your cycles, all these working capital cycles will be affected in a very significant way, and it will affect your executions, your delivery, everything. So here the idea was right, it was good, but the operating rhythm was not prepared for the reality, it was not prepared for the execution. So during planning stage, every founders always feel they are in control. But during execution, they actually realize how much it depends on the external factors like people, time, cash flow discipline, all these things, challenges will come that time. So the moment an idea hit the real world, your execution becomes less about your vision, it more about the discipline. That is what I am again repeatedly telling, a discipline system is much needed to execute your idea. That is what, when your idea hit the real world, the real taste of business begins.
Great, sir. Moving with the next question. Why is execution often more difficult than coming up with the ideas itself?
that is that is because, as I said, ideas are created in isolations, while execution happens in an environment full of variables, full of dependencies. Coming up with an idea is largely an individual exercise. Generally, when we develop an idea, it is an individual exercise, the promoter's exercise. Then it's just within us, very highly confidential leadership team. So, idea is generally a individual exercise. However, execution on the other hand depends on people, system, cash flow, and timing, and all these things moving together, as I said. That complexity makes the execution more difficult than an ideation. An idea only needs a clarity of thoughts. When you have a good clarity of thoughts, you can develop a great idea. So, a idea needs a clarity of thoughts. However, execution needs alignment. Alignment with your teams, alignment with your vendors, alignment with your customers, alignment with your lenders, and the moment even one of them will slips, the entire plan feels harder to manage. And this is a real fact. I have seen founders who are extremely clear about what they are doing, what they are building, what product they are making, but when the execution started, they had to deal with lot of things, as I said, maybe hiring delays, the cost overruns, the working capital gaps, and because of this, daily operational firefighting will keep happening. And another reason execution is harder is because of accountability. In business world, this accountability is much important or equally important than a good idea. An idea generally belongs to a founder, but execution belongs to an organizations. And an organization behave very differently than individuals. Because as I said, it needs alignment. That is what, it is very easy that anyone can have a great idea, good idea. But A sustainable business are built by those who can execute consistently under pressure when the real world challenges will come in front of you. That time, adapting to that, if you are able to execute the project with as per the plan, as per the projection, as per the margin, then you have a good systems, you have a good disciplines, and you have full control on your idea and your system. That is where execution separate ambition from outcomes. So here the ambition will be there, but the most important is the outcomes.
It sounds good. Um, Moving with the next question. At what point do founders realize their assumptions were wrong?
I'll tell it in a very different way. I'll tell you, most founders don't realize their assumptions are wrong during the planning stage. Nobody, because it is static in nature, and they do it in ideal situations, ideal conditions, and with some good assumptions. But at some stage, they realize this pressure. And when they realize when the assumptions were wrong, when the reality starts pushing back. How generally? Through cash flows, missed timelines, customer behavior that doesn't expected by the founders. I'll give you the context ki in a very simpler way ki how generally it happens. Assumptions feel safe when things are calm, when things are everything is doing in a right manner, and when it is in the planning stage. But once the execution starts, the business asks you a lot of uncomfortable questions. That time actually tested how the promoters is responding to that. The uncomfortable questions are like, why are payments delayed? Why your costs are moving faster than your revenue? Why the teams not scaling up as we expected? And that is when your assumptions get tested. I have seen founders assumes that key sales collection will happen in 30 days. But in reality, in real business scenario, almost most of the business, most of the times, it never happens in 30 days. It can stretch up to 90 days, 120 days. I have seen more than 180 days, more than 6 months. So, because of that, what will happen? Suddenly, a profitable business starts feeling pressure, start feeling stressed. And it is not because the idea was wrong, but because the assumptions around the cash flow was optimistic. You thought that you will get it in 30 days. And you make your business cycle according to that 30 days collection period. Your cash flow, you made it as per that. So it is optimistic, things that you planned it, but it never happened in practical scenario, in execution levels. So, moreover, most assumptions also don't fail immediately. I'll say they fail quietly through small delays, small overruns, and small compromises. And by the time all these small things founders realize it, the pressure has already built up. Already all the things is happened. So assumptions are not wrong by default. We should not say that the assumptions are wrong and by default all assumptions are wrong. They just need to be tested early, not discovered later. What it means, you need to do all type of sensitivity analysis at the time of ideations. If these things will not happen, if I'll not get my payments in 30 days, how I will sustain in my business, how I will continue my executions, how I deliver my projects on time. So that moment of realization usually comes when execution stops being comfortable, and the founders realize that time only कि maybe my assumptions were wrong, but it is not actually the truth.
Great, sir. Um, Moving with the next question. Why do customers behave differently than what founders expect?
This happens because the founders generally look to customer from a business perspective, because when you are being a founder, you always look to your customer as a business perspective, while the customer act based on their own priorities. Customer never behaves as per your priorities, they always behave as per their own priorities, and a lot of things are there why they generally behave as per their own priorities, because founders usually expect that customer will behave logically, but customer behaved as per their convenience, as per their cash flow, and the most important, the alternatives available in the market. If it is not you, then somebody else, because they have that bargain power. Actually, that gap creates surprise during executions for the promoters. And I'll explain it in a very simpler way. In planning, generally we assume customer will pay on time because it was the agreed terms with the customers. And customer will value our product, value our services as we do. But in reality, customer optimize their own pressure, not our pressure. That is a fact. We need to accept it. We need to have a provision during our planning stage. That is what I have seen many businesses where demand was so strong, orders were coming in flow, but customer delayed payment because they are managing their own cash flows. They had multiple suppliers options. They simply had more bargaining power. What it means, it doesn't mean that they have not accepted your products. They accepted the products, but the payment behavior was different from what a business or a founders was expected. So customers didn't break promises intentionally actually. They respond as per their leverage, as per their urgency. So execution exposes how much control a business has over its customer. If you don't have a control through a disciplined system, then it's very difficult to execute the project as per the planning or as per customers' expectations. So good execution is not being that key you will hope everything the customer will behave well. It is about that you should design a system in such a way that when the customer is not behaving as per your expectation, you can sustain to execute that time. That is the real challenge and that is the real fact.
It sounds good, sir. Next question. What are the most common mistakes people make during early execution?
It's a great question, and I can say very much related to the market condition, current market conditions. So I'll put it in a very different perspectives that most early execution mistakes don't come from a bad intent. They come because businesses trying to do too many things at once. In early executions, what are the most common mistakes generally happens? I'll tell you because these are the real world example. Generally, the founders, the businesses overestimate the speed and same time underestimating the cash flow pressure. And the most important, they delayed the difficult decisions. These three things are most important. I want to repeat that. Overestimating the speed, underestimating the cash flow, and delaying the difficult decisions. These are the three most and only mistakes generally businesses do at the time of early execution. And these mistakes usually don't show up immediately, but they compounded very fast. This is reality, and I'll say in a simpler way. Early on, what happened? Founders try to scale before they stabilizing the process. They hire people before clarity on the roles. They change growth before fixing the process. Because of this, the execution becomes noisy instead of focused. And I have seen businesses grow their revenue quickly in the first year, but they ignore capital discipline. That case, your sales increased, but your collections slowed down. Because of that, your cost moved faster than your cash inflows. On paper, your business was growing, but in reality, the stress was building underneath. So, we need to understand the business that survive are the ones that fixed basics first. What are those basics? As we discussed earlier, cash flows, accountability, and the operational rhythm, the operating rhythm. That is why early disciplines matter than early speed.
Nice. Moving with the next question. Why do small problems during execution grow into big failures?
It is such powerful questions, Rima, and it explains how and why a small ignorance become big pain. I'll put it in this way. Small problems usually don't kill your business. Generally, it will never kill your business. But ignoring them actually does it. If we ignore your problems, like as we discussed earlier, if small problems are coming up, if then and there, if you are not facing them, you are thinking that okay, it's a small issues, let's fix it later. Let's go with the flow. Then it will pile up. And you are ignoring this type of mistakes. And later on, you will have to pay for that. And exactly this happens during executions. Small problems grow into big failures because they are often ignored instead of solved. And people assume generally whenever it happens at early stage for a startup company or a early stage company or a growth company, people assume, okay, let's do with the important things, the priority things, we'll see it later on. But execution rarely gives you that luxury. It will not give you that luxury ever. And I'll give you a best examples to justify this. Always a small problems look harmless at early stage. Let for an example, I'll again and again I'll tell you that working capital cycles. Your payment delayed by 15 days. You ignore that, okay, I'll manage it for 15 days. Then again it delayed by another 15 days. You thought, okay, in business it happens. Let manage it at our end. But again and again and again it started piled up and your receivables and your cash conversion cycle become bigger and bigger. And it creates a lot of pressure because your capital stuck over there. When your working capital cycle is bigger in nature, your capital will stuck. You will not have money behind it to run the show. Your vendor will ask you payment. You don't have payment because your collection was delayed. Your lender will ask you to pay the interest, to pay the EMIs. You will fail in that because you have not collected your cash from your customer. You are not able to buy the fresh material to deliver the next milestones. So these are the practical issues will piled up slowly, slowly and quietly. So because of that, small cost overrun, your internal deadlines will be missed, and each one seems manageable. But when they will piled up and they will come together, they will weaken your businesses. They will affect your business at the root level. And I have seen businesses ignores these type of small collection delays because they thought my sales is strong. What will happen? Today or tomorrow I'll get the money. But your sales are strong at the same time. If your cash flow are not strong, then it is very difficult to sustain at that situation. Very difficult to continue your executions. Very difficult to deliver the project on time as you committed to your customers. And customer will not bother about that because it's a practical in nature. The customer may delay your payment because it they also face a lot of external factors. So you need to have a system for that. You need to have a plan for that. If it is not there, then you need to face that challenges and it will affect in a significant way because over the time when all these things piled up, when your cash cycle stretched, when your working capital pressure increased, by the time you reacted to it, the issues were no longer smaller. It already affected your growth. It, as I said, it will affect the lender's confidence on you because when lenders lent money on you, that time they thought the business is good, the idea is good, and the execution will happen as per the plan, and the cash flow will be as per the plan. I'll get my interest on time, I'll get my EMIs on time. If it is a private placement, I'll get my return with a good multiplier. All these things is the lender's expectations, the investor's expectations. You will not be stand out in that expectations. You will lose. They will lose confidence on you, and lot of things, lot of other parameters will come up and you may have to face a lot of repercussions out of it. So that is what you need to understand. Execution doesn't fail suddenly. You will think that okay, oh, it happens suddenly. It never. It fails gradually. You need to check that. You need to review that. You need to assess that. And how it happened gradually through a small compromises. As I said, 15 days delay. Okay, it happens in business. I'll have to consider it. Again, another 15 days. Okay, I need to consider it. These type of small compromises actually failed. Because of that, because of you unchecked it, you have not reviewed it, you have not considered it, you have ignored it. That is what your execution failed. So it needs to be taken care diligently. You need to review religiously whatever the things is happening on day-to-day basis. You need to develop a systems to cross checks, to check all these things on day-to-day basis, by which it will never affect your execution, your delivery period, your cash cycles, your investors' confidence. That is what a disciplined systems or a disciplined review matters from day one. That I can say for these things.
Great, sir. Moving with the next question. How does lack of clarity in roles of impact execution?
Can you just repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. How does lack of clarity in roles of impact execution?
Yes. Generally, poor poor executions is rarely about effort. It is not about effort. It is about the decision taken too late, as we said in our early questions. If you are taking decision too late or you are taking it emotionally, it will affect your executions. And it affects because the leader, the founders hesitate or avoid tough calls. May you think that ki, what about my business relationship? If I'll say it strongly ki, we need our payment in 30 days, you are not able to consider 15 days. So when you are taking this type of emotional decisions, when you are hesitate to bring it up on the table when you are discussing with the customers, then or you make choices based on optimism instead of evidence, then these type of execution issues will keep happening. Because I'll tell you, execution moves fast when the decisions are clear enough. Confusion in decision brings everything to a halt. If you have confusion in your decisions, whether I will do it or not, then it may hamper your execution level. It will delay your executions. And for every delay, you have to pay for that. Because business means finance. It has a financial impact for every aspects in your business. So if you're doing it emotionally, if you're doing it with an hesitations, with only for a business relationship, then you may have to compromise so many things. And you will affect in your executions level, and your execution will be affected financially, and it will build up a huge pressure and stress maybe to a level that you may not sustain that time. So, in executions, your team look to the leadership for directions. Always it happens. And when decisions are unclear, what happen? Your priorities will shift frequently because you don't have a clear decisions what to do now, and you will feel okay. This time, I'm feeling that this is the priority. Let's do it, and suddenly another priority will come. You will prioritize that. You will go to that, and team will be confused. Team don't know what to focus that time. And because of that, as we said previously, your accountability weakens. And when your accountability affected, it how it looks? It looks that work is happening, but the progress is not there. Because the important is that if you are working, the progress should be there. If you don't have a progress, then it's a noise, nothing else. So, in execution, at the time of delivering the project, working on a project, speed of decisions making often matters. The speed of decision is much more important than perfection of decisions. That is very much important. Because I'll say it, a reasonably correct decisions taken early is always better than a perfect decisions taken later. Because if you are taking later, not early, then by that time lot of things piled up as we discussed. So poor decisions doesn't slow down the executions, but they silently drain your team's energy, your team's confidence, and the momentum, which is very important. If the momentum is slowed down, then it will affect the execution in a significant way. That is why execution improves when leadership becomes decisive. That's I can say for this particular point.
Nice. Moving with the next question. Why does having funding not guarantee successful execution?
I'll be very fair enough for these questions because being a investment banker, being a CFO for 20 years, it is the bread and butter for me. And I am living with this type of situations every day, every moment. So I'll be fair to these questions. And I'll put it in this way, or I can format in a perspective that actually what a funding does actually. Funding solves a capacity problem. It doesn't solve the execution problems. This is all important aspects we all need to understand. Having funding gives businesses resources, but execution still depends on discipline, depends on your systems, and depends on how your decision making is. Without this, funding often increases pressure instead of reducing it. Actually, it happens. Maybe it is not sounding real, but this is the practical things. Funding always increases pressure instead of reducing it. If you don't have a foolproof system, you don't have a decision making authority, and if you don't deliberately given the ownership to the team, these things keep happening. And let me simplify it with a practical example. Let once the funding comes in, what happens actually in the organization when the funding comes in? What happens? your expectation rise. कि yes, now I have funding, I can do wonder. This expectation rise. Your timeline shorten. You thought कि oh, I can do it quickly. And mistakes become more expensive. This is a real scenario. I am telling it diligently and deliberately. This happens in real world and the practical scenario with every businesses. If you will not take care all those things, then it has a great impact in a negative way. So, on context of this, I want to reveal a truth that every business need to understand and accept it also, that if the organization is not execution ready, this is, again I'm stressing this word, if the organization is not ready for executions, your funding amplifies weakness instead of fixing them. How? I'll justify it. I'll simplify it. I have seen companies and I'm helping the companies to raise funds. And immediately what they do, immediately they will expand their team with an expectation that now we have funding, we can grow fast. So they expand their team without thinking. They will set up a new facility to increase their capacity. So your expenses will keep increasing because of all these things. And please try to understand, at the same time, you are doing all these things without stabilizing your process. You are not looking to that stabilizing of the process. You are only looking, I have funding, I can do all these things. I have the luxury right now to take a things like this. And same time you are not doing it or you are not stabilizing your process. Because of that, what repercussion can happen? So it will lead to, instead of a smooth growth, coordination issues increased. Your cost went up faster than your output. And your leadership team spent more time in firefighting because everything is puzzled up. That time, I can say this problem not happened because of lack of money. You thought that the money, whatever I got it, the funding, it is already invested, so I didn't have the money or I don't have the money. So it is not because of lack of money. It was lack of execution readiness. You are not ready for executions and you are not stabilizing your process. However, you are taking the decisions as per the funding you get. So, in a summarized way, I can say capital accelerate whatever your existing systems are there already. If the system is strong, your growth will accelerate using that capital. Or else, if the system is weak, I'll tell you, your problem will accelerate. Even though you have capital, even though you got funding, your problem will accelerate. And it is a practical scenario. I have experienced it. I have seen this across industries over many years. That is why execution readiness should come before capital, not after the capital.
It sounds good. Uh, so this is your last question for today's session. Why is speed more important than perfection during execution?
I am not able to get you.
Why is speed more important Then perfection during execution.
So, as we said earlier, perfection is not that important. Perfection, instead of perfection, if you are taking early decisions, that is actually more important. As we said, whenever the small things are coming up, the small mistakes are happening then and there, if you are taking the necessary actions, if you are building the systems to avoid those mistakes, if you are building a systems to mitigate the risk in your executions, if you are developing a systems where that you can give a clarity to your teams will be aligned with the systems, your teams will execute properly. So the perfection is not that important. The important is that the clarity of thoughts, the clarity of systems, the efficiency into the systems. Because if you bring efficiency into the system, it can bring efficiency into the execution, it can bring efficiency into your margin, it can bring efficiency to your confidence that investor has. All these things will keep smooth, all these things will happen smooth. So that perfection is not that important. Important is that keep deliberately you have to take quick decisions with clarity. I can say that.
Great. Moving ahead, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to Mr. Parth Giri for being our guest for today at Conversation with Consultants. Your presence and engagement helped to make this event successful. Thank you for providing insights into your exciting journey. Further, we would also like to thank our audience for listening patiently throughout the event. Thank you everyone joining with us today and hope that everyone gains some knowledge from this event. Looking ahead, we are excited to announce that our next episode 89 of Conversation with Consultants will be held soon. We hope to see you all there. Thank you and we look forward to reconnecting with you again. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us all social media handles to stay connected with us. Goodbye and have a great day ahead. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rima, and thank you everyone for staying through these conversations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.